It's been a while since I've covered an incremental game, and I saw ReBlade on Idle Cub's channel and decided it looked like it was worth giving a shot. So the basics of ReBlade is that you have this giant armory, and you're working towards re-empowering each weapon by slaughtering increasingly large waves of enemies. The enemies are no actual threat to you, you're just using them for resources. As a matter of fact, you unlock new enemy types and increase the number of enemies as part of the talent tree. Each weapon has its own starting stats and feels a little different from the others, though it really breaks down to small and fast, middle of the pack, or large and slow, as well as some variants in talents and awakenings when you level them up, although by the time you pump a whole bunch of stats into them, they get a little bit closer to being very similar to each other. There are also armor pieces that give a variety of set bonuses which carry over from weapon to weapon. Every time you start a new weapon, the weapon starts from 0 except for said armor bonuses, and the deeper down the weapon list you go, the higher of a bonus you get towards awakenings. So in other words, you open up nodes on the awakening thing faster. So the awakenings act kind of like picking a weapon in any sort of survivor style game, or whenever you open up something you can have a choice of 3. And you pick one and go on again. Sometimes the same one will pop up, and if you pick it again, it upgrades it. You know how that goes in these style games. It sounds complicated, but it really isn't. You'll fill out the majority of the talent tree just playing the game like normal, and I say the majority because the very last node can take 100 points, and I have yet to fully finish one. There are bosses you can fight, and they will earn you a different set of points that are much more limited, but let you buff up one area of the weapon. These are actual choices. So this would be where your playstyle preferences come in, because you will not get enough of those points to fill out the whole tree. However, you can boost baseline attack, attack speed, range, or crit, and you have 2 different sets of trees within those 4 that you can pick from. And you can either buff up the stats straight up, or you can actually pick the other talent that gives a much more significant boost to that particular stat, but at the cost of another one. So say if you buff up attack with the secondary talent, it boosts attack like 12% instead of 4%, but it costs you a certain amount of your crit, which is an interesting choice. And you'll only get a total of 20 of these points though, because there are only 20 bosses, and beating the 20th boss actually gives you the end of the story, and these bosses are actually separate. Like, you trigger the boss encounter separate from the regular levels. So you can grind up your strength, go challenge a boss, earn one of those points to pump into this tree, or use the other section to earn the currency you need to upgrade the other tree. So once you hit the 20th boss and get that story ending, to me that was a good place to go ahead and swap to another weapon, because as you're killing the raid bosses, you also earn points that you can use to unlock the other weapons, because you only start out with the 1 by default. But you earn enough points that you can open up basically any weapon that you want to very quickly. So there's a huge variety of builds that you could potentially go for regarding these specific stats and the awakenings, but the game suffers from one big thing. I'm not really sure that your choices actually matter in the long run. My first weapon, I took the time and thought about everything. Tried to string everything together well and make sure it was a solid build. So make sure the awakenings all flowed well together, make sure that my talents actually backed up the stuff I was getting in the awakenings. And whether or not I finished a particular awakening wasn't as important to me as picking what I thought would hit the most important stats for that particular run. So if I thought this awakening, like if I had 2 up, and one would say boost attack because that's what I was focusing on, and the other one was just going to be an improvement on a previous awakening, I'd pick the attack boost just to try to focus on that particular stat. The second weapon, I tried to grab what I thought was the best choice, but started playing with a rule that I would always select an awakening I had already picked once, just to see if capping them off was better. I didn't really notice a super huge difference. The second playthrough was faster, but that's because I had that awakening boost from it not being my first weapon and had some of the armor from a previous playthrough. So I was opening up the main talents faster and getting awakenings faster, but other than everything happening at a faster rate, it didn't really feel any different. So the third time around, I just kind of selected randomly, only still following the rule of always grabbing something I'd grabbed before, and that's just for the sake of being somewhat consistent. Still couldn't tell the difference, just picking randomly without even paying attention to it. You see a visual difference on screen whether you've picked fireballs, icicles, or lightning, but it didn't really feel any different, and once you get so far into the game, even those visual differences kind of blend into the background because you have so much going on. There's so many things on screen that it's hard to tell what is doing what. The numbers growing and sense that you're getting stronger was fun, at least for a while, but by the time I hit my 4th weapon, I started to grow somewhat bored with the game. Once you've nailed it once, you really don't feel like you have to think again after that. And you quickly realize you don't really have to think that much at all in general. That doesn't mean this is bad. It's still a pretty fun game for passing a little bit of time. You do feel like you're getting progressively more powerful, but it feels like that's going to happen no matter what choices you make. Overall, I enjoyed the game. I just want more from it. It has a boatload of potential. It checks a lot of the marks I like out of incremental games. It has a talent tree. It has the abilities akin to a good roguelike. There are inbuilt reasons to play through more than once. At least if they were to make the weapons feel a little bit more different from each other, there would be. And it is simple to understand and get going with. It feels like a power fantasy where the developer just couldn't commit to going all the way, to really ramping up your power gains in a way that the game can't outpace you. No weapon playthrough really took more than an hour, and with that short of an interval, you can let your players really go wild towards the end without requiring a pointless grind. And I say pointless because by the time you get around to grinding out those last 100 points, you've already beaten all the bosses, typically. Or at minimum, it only takes 3 or 4 point investment into that 100 point talent before you can beat that 20th raid boss. You're literally just going to be running around to get those last points to see the weapon complete at that point. Like, you're just going to be going back in, destroying things, and clicking one button. So it becomes more like an idle game that you actually have to actively participate in somewhat, which sort of defeats the point of the idle games, which this would heavily benefit from some sort of idle mechanic, something where if you've been offline for so long or the game's been closed for so long, it gives you so many points passively to help with that last talent choice if they're going to do that type of system. For me, on a scale of 1 to 10, it would be around a 7, because for some reason within gaming, 7 seems to stand for average rather than slightly above average. If I were giving it on an actually balanced scale, it'd be somewhere around 6, so slightly better than dead center, but not that. But in gaming terms, it's a 7. It's visually appealing, relaxing, and easy to get into, but it has very little variety, even though it looks like there should be a boatload of variety. But the one place where it really wins is that it's only about $4. And if you cap off every weapon, which I haven't done, you're going to spend way more than 4 hours playing the game, so the cost per hour spent will fall well below about $1 an hour, which, to me, you generally want a game to have got down to where you're spending about $1 per hour on the game for it to be a super good value. So this puts it in the top tier in terms of value for time per dollar spent. And even if you only play through one weapon, $4 for about an hour's worth of entertainment, because if you take your time with it and you actually look at the talents and stuff, it'd probably take about an hour to do at least one. That's not that bad. So I don't feel the need to be hypercritical of it, because at this price point, expectations are pretty low, and at a minimum, it's fun enough for the time spent. It doesn't feel like it's time wasted, because it's not making you spend 6 hours to grind out those last couple points just to kill one boss. It seems to be very aware of what it is in terms of the gameplay loop, and it lets you fulfill that gameplay loop. It does seem to want you to have to invest a decent amount of time if you want to 100% every weapon. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing is up for debate. I feel like the way they've done it makes it uninteresting to cap it off, and it would just be something that's more of a I have an OCD moment and I need to cap it off, so I'm going to do it. But that's a whole other discussion. This also, because it's kind of short, means that you're going to be well within the 2-hour refund window for Steam. So if you absolutely hate your experience and you really feel like you were ripped off, you'll probably be able to complete one weapon and then get your $4 back. Which, to me, I don't feel like with something like this that it would be worth refunding. And now that seems to be a thing for people, that if they can beat a game within the refund window, they refund it and then just kind of laugh about it. And I don't get that. I enjoyed the game enough, even if I'd only played through it once, that I'm not going to take the developer's money back. they provided the entertainment I paid for, but we're not going to dive into that. There's a game that has like 96% positive reviews that generally only takes like an hour to beat, but people are refunding it at a very high percentage rate, which is silly. Anyway, so if you want to take away anything from this, I would say it is a recommend, and it's one that you can get far enough into it that you can tell really quickly if you do like it. If you don't like it, get it refunded. If you do like it, leave it on there and just pick it up whenever you don't have much else to do and you want to just be able to turn your brain off and click and see big numbers for a little bit, because it definitely delivers that. The weapon designs look cool, the little bit of story in it's actually pretty cool. It's just, you're doing the exact same thing over and over and over again, which is sort of what incrementals are like, but not really. Incrementals that are really good, you do the same thing over and over, but with minor tweaks each time. And those little tweaks are sort of what give you that big adrenaline boost, because you get more efficient and better at it. With this, you improve up to a certain point, and then it's really impossible to tell that you're improving anymore. Anyway, that's all I have to say about ReBlade. Go check it out on Steam if it interests you, and remember, if I can beat it, so can you.